Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and this is another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. I apologize that it's been quite a while since the last one. I'll do a catch-up episode to catch you up on things, but today it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Joshua Olivieri, who's come to talk to us about his debut book. So let's do it. Welcome.
Hey Melinda, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
So tell us about your book.
Yeah, so my novel is called The Fifth Commander, and it is a dark fantasy story about the chosen one figure being the antagonist rather than the protagonist. And it centers around a character Gallen, who is the titular fifth commander of the chosen one's empire, essentially. And while he is out on missions and there's a war brewing with a rebellion, he discovers a betrayal that causes him to sort of rethink his entire place in the world and rethink whether his master has the realm's best intentions or not. And so he has to go on a quest to essentially fight against the chosen one. And so the novel is about, what happens when this character chosen by the divine turns on everybody. How do they get themselves out of this situation, and what sort of power do they have to turn to? What kind of difficult choices do they have to make, and who gets lost along the way in trying to essentially overcome these nearly impossible odds?
I'm getting like Anakin Skywalker vibes from some of this. He's the chosen one that you don't want to be the chosen one. That comes to mind for me.
Right. Some people would argue that Anakin is not the chosen one, that it was actually Luke the whole time, and that it was only through Anakin's lineage that there was some sort of midi-chlorian stuff happening. Where I got the inspiration actually was I was a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And they've done sequel series since then. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if they did one where the Avatar was the bad guy, and you could center it around the Avatar or not, but wouldn't it be interesting if the Avatar was the villain? Like if you just had one reincarnation that just totally went drunk with power, or had the right idea but the wrong way of getting to it. And that's kind of where this came from. I got so frustrated that they weren't doing it that I decided, well, you know what? I'll do it. I'll do it myself. And everything kind of spiraled out from there.
Mm-hmm. Was it hard to do that? Because that kind of goes against type.
Yeah, actually. So I started writing when I was 13. And I'm much older than that now. And when I started writing the book, it wasn't called The Fifth Commander. It was something a lot more rote. And it was sort of this coming of age traditional epic fantasy where you have a chosen one figure who goes on a coming of age journey, and his mentor dies, and he goes on this big epic quest, and that, I was always inspired by Tolkien's works, so it was only natural that was what I came up with as a kid. And I actually finished that version of it when I was in high school, but it is unreadable. I will never show it to anybody. It is god awful. And later in life, when I decided to revisit it, I realized this is really boring, and something needs to be done. So it actually I went through several different iterations of how could I take kind of the bones of what this book is and make it way more interesting. And I just kept asking myself, what's the most interesting possible spin I can have on this? And the thing I kept coming back to is, I did it's like, maybe I do something more grounded. Maybe I work on something more political. Maybe I do it like a thriller, and I kept coming back to, what if instead of just doing the whole chosen one thing, what if I just sort of see that concept to the end and essentially use that original manuscript sort of as the backstory for this villain character. So a lot of that was kind of built in my head. It wasn't actually, as far as writing the book goes, doing the antagonist was probably the easiest part, because I think that was the clearest idea in my head, and everything spiraled from that central concept. So that was the easiest part for me.
Okay, what was the hardest part?
The hardest part for me was getting a lot of the world building down right.
Okay.
I was trying. I went through a lot of different iterations as to what it was supposed to look like, but I didn't want to spend too much time on the world building before I actually wrote it. So I just kind of wrote the story and inserted details as they came up naturally. And then as I went through editing cycles, I realized this doesn't make sense. This isn't explained well enough. This has no detail on it, or this simply isn't interesting enough. So trying to think about how everything fits in this world in a natural, cohesive way, and thinking about, I want this to be immersive. I don't want to write anything that's going to break the narrative for some people. I want to have some sort of cohesion and rules so that people can, as they read and things happen, they understand the gravity of events or character beats, because a lot of that stuff is sort of established concisely enough early on, so that way there's no question about what exactly is going on here. So that was definitely the hardest part.
Oh wow, I gotta ask, so if this is the 5th commander, what happened to the other 4?
They're alive, actually, in the book. So there are 5 commanders total, and they serve the Alkatharos, who's the chosen one figure, and each of them was sort of inducted at a different time. There've been other commanders prior to where this story takes place, but the 5th refers to, there are 5 current commanders, and Gallen, our protagonist, just so happens to be the 5th of the current wave of commanders.
Okay, interesting. So I guess if they're still around, we'll possibly bump into them into the story.
Yeah, they're pretty early on, actually. One of the they're very central to the story. They kind of weave in and out, because they're, for all intents and purposes, they're Gallen's brothers in arms. And in the case of the 4th commander, he's actually Gallen's older brother. And
Oh, wow.
they're both humans, and they're the only 2 humans to have ever been selected as commanders, simply because they surpassed any expectations. Because the world of the 5th commander is called Valazar, and in Valazar there are all kinds of different races, things that I invented. Modern fantasy's gotten away from a lot of like fae and dwarves and elves, and I definitely follow that track rather than trying to put a spin on stuff like more classic fantasy. So I've got a lot of unique races, but it's easy to imagine that a lot of these races that are more, in some cases, animalistic, or have different types of magic, that they would naturally be stronger than most humans. So the whole story kind of focuses around Gallen and his brother, where they are significant for their own kind, to the point where even the antagonist recognizes it.
Oh wow, that's quite a wow. Do you want to do an excerpt, or do you want to say anything else about the book first? Because now I want to hear some of it.
Sure. Well, let's just get into it. I've got the first chapter up here.
Go for it.
Yeah, let me pull it over so people aren't seeing me look to the side the whole time.
Yeah, so this is The 5th Commander by Joshua Olivieri, read by Joshua Olivieri. Only in this podcast. I don't think there is actually an audiobook of
There
it.
is no audiobook. I would love to do one, but funding a novel on Kickstarter is a long process.
Oh yes.
I would love to do one. It's definitely something that many people have told me, this sounds awesome. If this were an audiobook, I would absolutely listen to it. So it's on my radar, but it's one of those, let me get the book out first, and then we'll sort out the audio version from there.
Since you bring it up, we'll come back to the excerpt, I promise.
Yeah.
But since you brought it up, so this is being released through a Kickstarter.
Yes.
When is that launching? Or is it out now?
I'm currently, so it's in pre-launch. You can go to
Okay.
Kickstarter right now and look up the 5th Commander, and it'll pop up, and you can click that notify me on launch button. By the time you listen to this, it may already be out. It may be in post-launch, but at the time of this recording, it's in pre-launch. You can go look it up now, and it's there. The campaign's there. I sort of break down the story. You can go read an excerpt of the novel there if you want to, but I'm targeting early June for the release. I'm trying to hit.
This will come out before that. So when you're listening to this, it will still not have launched. So you can still go and follow it.
Still in pre-launch. You haven't.
Yeah, I put these out pretty quick, as folks know. Generally, within a week, I usually have it up, unless something happens. Yeah, so we'll have links. I'm gonna, I always do show notes or description depending on where you're listening to this. There will be a link in there, I promise.
Awesome.
And is there anything else you want to say about the Kickstarter? If folks are not aware, I've done, so some of you may be aware, because I've done now 6 Kickstarters, I believe it is. And so the way it works is that we have, some people do special editions thing. I've done some of those too, but mostly I prefer to do Kickstarters for brand new books. Lately, I'm doing them because I don't have Amazon anymore, and that will be in the catch-up episode, I promise. So no more details on that right now. But Kickstarter is becoming a great way for authors to get books to people without having to deal with a middleman like Amazon or other retailers, that we can go directly to you without having a store, because many storefronts, either we have to pay a lot of money up front or pay ongoing monthly fees, or they take a large percentage of things as in retailers. So the best way for us to get books out to you wonderful readers is to sell to you directly. And Kickstarter makes that fairly easy, I would say. They don't take a very large fee, but obviously if we're offering physical rewards, we do have to pay the printer and we do have to pay shipping. So a lot of the tier price that you would pay for a physical tier does not really go to us authors. It does go to the printer and to the whoever we're using to ship things with, just so you're aware. But because we launched them as Kickstarters, it also allows us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do in a regular store. Many authors will do print on demand, where they would send the order to the printer and the printer then sends you the book. But some authors are lucky enough to be able to get a larger order of books, maybe do a print run or something, and then they can get maybe posters or other fun things and put together book boxes. I have not been able to do that to make it cost effective to be able to offer that, but that's the dream someday. I don't know if Joshua is going to be able to do that for his first campaign out. It might just be getting you the books and maybe some fun extras, maybe a short story or something. I'm not sure, but that's generally how it goes. And we do try to give you something extra in whatever we are able to do. And it is a more personal experience because you do hear from us. You get updates on the campaign. If you choose to back, if you follow, you get notified about the campaign. And it's just a fun way to do this. And Kickstarters are all or nothing. So it is important that if you are interested, that you do back, because once the campaign is funded, then it's guaranteed. All rewards are guaranteed. But until it's funded, nothing is guaranteed. So there is that element of fun in there.
Yeah, great summary, Melinda. You kind of hit the nail on the head, and you covered everything.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to call attention to any fun things that you're planning to do in your campaign. As a debut author, you might be trying to keep it on the simple side, which I would recommend, because it's your first time. You don't want to get too complex.
I do have a few things that are in the works. I don't want to talk too much in detail about them, but I am working with an illustrator. I'm not That's about all I'll say at the moment, but I do have some irons in the fire as to what I'm going to offer in the book, and the version of the Fifth Commander that comes up in the Kickstarter will be different. It will be exclusive to this campaign. There are extras in it that will not be present when I do a full retail release for it. So
Okay.
if you want to get on the ground floor and get some of the sort of the comprehensive version of the Fifth Commander, sort of the Joshua's heart and soul version of the Fifth Commander, do it now.
Yeah, and the reason why we can't offer some of these extras to retailers is that simply they don't offer it. Many
Correct.
printers limit, they don't allow us to do edges or foil or other things. The printers who will work with us, indie authors, very often don't distribute to retailers. So we can get a pretty book, but then our only option is to sell it to you directly because there's no other way to get it to you. There's no other way to do it. So that it's all fun.
Yeah.
And I can do if folks want an episode talking about that more in depth, because I've done a whole bunch of Kickstarters. Just if people are interested in knowing more about how that all works, I don't mind doing it. Anyways, I don't want to spend too much time on Kickstarter because that's not why we're here. We are here to hear about the Fifth Commander. So anything else you want to say about the Kickstarter? And again, all the links will be in the description, not just the Kickstarter links. Joshua sent me some other links for his newsletter and other things if you want to follow him, and you should, to see what's going on. So all that'll be in there as well.
Yeah, I just want to say, if you're at all interested and you want to go follow the Kickstarter campaign, every follow, every visit to that page is a massive help to me, and it would mean the world to me. So if you hear any of this, if you're listening to this and you think you want to give the Fifth Commander a read or check out the campaign, please do so. I would be unendingly grateful to you.
Awesome. So I hope you'll check that out. And all right, are we ready with that excerpt?
We sure are.
Let's go. So this is The Fifth Commander by Joshua Olivieri.
Yes, this is The Fifth Commander, Chapter 1. Smoke rose heavenward, obscuring the sun with black puffs that swelled as they climbed. 2 soldiers clad in white armor dismounted from a large wolf with black fur that made it look like a ghost amid the smog that clung to the ground. Behind them was a host of soldiers clad in dull orange with glistening white gauntlets. Their armor was pristine, unsoiled by the battle that raged ahead. They sat atop their dorn mounts, large hunched beasts with pig-like snouts, tusks, and spikes jutting from their spines. Around them was a group of phalanxes, standard soldiers who bore the same color orange with gauntlets to match. Their garb was tainted, chipped, cracked, and caked in a mixture of blood and dirt. Few still stood, while many more lay on the ground with open wounds and raspy breaths. A few unmoving bodies lay limp several feet from the living. The battle had left no time to bury them. "My lords, you've come just in time." The captain of the group limped toward them, identifiable by the red shoulder guard on his left side. In spite of his injury, he stood proudly at attention, slammed his right hand over his breast, and gave a short bow. The other soldiers who laid eyes on the riders also sprang to their feet and clasped their weapons, invigorated at the sight of them. "The Twin Hammers," they began muttering to each other. "The Twin Hammers are here. The day is won." "At ease, Captain. What's the situation here?" Gallen, the taller of the 2 white-armored soldiers, asked, his eyes and ears fixed on the town that lay before them. Morens, a military town built at the base of a valley flanked by steep hills and cliffs, already bore the scars of war. A mixture of gunfire, shouting, and metal clashing filled the air just beyond the wall closest to them. The echoes urged Gallen to leap over and invade. His fingers twitched at the thought of taking on the dust bearers, slashing through them one by one, his blade whistling and singing through the scuffle. It was what they deserved. "Dustbearer forces punched through the north wall," the captain answered, cupping his hands in a circle. "We're not sure how they managed to get such a strong army this far into Eret. It's been 3 days and they haven't let up." "That's why we're here." The shorter of the white soldiers, Arastair, slapped his hand on the captain's back. "You just get any men still able to fight behind us, and we'll handle the rest." "Yes, my lord commander," The captain bowed once more. He turned to shout at the other soldiers. Before he could give the order, those standing rallied and formed a perfect line, hands pressed against their breastplates. One last thing. Gallen held up a finger, causing the captain to snap toward him. Keep them away from the Carian. Allow me to handle it. The captain bowed again. Yes, my lord commander. Gallen flexed his fingers and rattled his hands at the wrists. A trip to Arret with the Alkatharos unit would never have been ordered if a Carian had not been deployed. It was bad news for the Sarayan soldiers stationed there, but good news for Gallen. It meant they would be one step closer to ridding Valazar of the Dustbearer rebellion after it had sprung up in just the last 2 years. 2 years of trying to stamp them out. 2 years of snuffing scattered fires across Auden and Arret. As persistent as the rebels had been, battles were far from a nuisance to Gallen. Carians were far better opponents than his usual fare. Just remember to stick to our method, Arister said. I can't have you chasing another Carian clear out of range like in the Delphor Mountains. I never asked you to follow me, Gallen said, crossing his arms. Arister always brought that back up when there was no need. I wasn't going to let my little brother get ambushed in a mountain range miles away from home, Arister reminded. But we have more lives at stake this time. Focus the Carian and let me and the Alkatharos unit take care of the rest. Nothing more. Got it? Arister held out his fist to Gallen. Gallen rolled his eyes before tapping his fist against his brother's. Got it. Arister revealed his glaive from his back, gripping its decorated black rod tight. A lone ribbon of red hung from the point where steel met wood, a crimson dance against the brilliant sheen of his armor. Gallen flicked his thumb forward, unsheathing his katana a few inches, careful not to reveal it until the moment to strike. The Alkatharos unit behind them likewise raised their weapons as the phalanxes joined their ranks. Move into town swiftly. Rescue any men we can and get any civilians out. For the Lordship. Arister held his glaive high, the red cloth weaving a pattern through the wind. The creases and curves whipped and contorted for all to see, almost as if his weapon echoed Arister's eagerness. The soldiers likewise raised their weapons, both regular and Alkatharos. Gallen and his brother mounted the wolf again. He would let the others worry about rescue. His priority was the enemy. If you end up needing a hand, just ask and I'll get to you if I have time, Arister nudged his brother who sat close behind him. At your age, you should worry about not hurting your knees and all the fighting, Gallen said with a flat tone. Arister gave his brother a light punch on the shoulder, knowing that Gallen's dry response belied the humor beneath. With a swift kick of Arister's right leg, the wolf Rogog turned to face the town. His master, glaive remaining high, pointed it forward and snapped at the wolf with both feet. The wolf shot forward before Arister's feet even returned to their normal position, throwing clumps of overturned dirt where his paws once were. The soldiers all charged forward behind them. Alkatharos archers knocked their arrows. The phalanxes charged on foot behind them, but none could keep pace with the twin hammers. The commanders were the first in the town. The fires and clang of steel, no longer muffled by the wall that stood between them, exploded as they entered. Inarticulate shouting came from all sides. Rogog's pace did not suffer amid the chaos, nor did Arister's command over his mount. Gallen's eyes remained locked forward, balancing himself perfectly with each bound of the wolf underneath. More phalanxes lay strewn throughout their path. Upon seeing Rogog, they sprang to their feet. Once again, the shine of the commanders in white rejuvenated them as they rushed behind their lords and let out battle cries. Every phalanx that saw them in the streets did the same. They neared the center of town, where paved streets crossed into a clearing with 3-storied buildings. Gallen saw dustbearers on the far side. Orgs, Veens, men, and Krelthar were all joined together, bearing down on the phalanxes that held the closer end, visible by the flecks of orange that peeked through the crowd. Archers, take your mark and fire at will, Arister yelled back at the force trailing several paces behind. The dustbearers noticed the two commanders approaching, so they pulled back from the fight to reform a line. The Alkatharos unit released their arrows. Feathers and steel tips whizzed past and above the commanders to strike their foes. Every shot hit its mark as dustbearers began collapsing. Gallen snickered at seeing them crumble. That was the fate of all who were foolish enough to challenge the Alkatharos. Arrows continued to fly as more dustbearer warriors filled the gaps created by the commander's archers. However, the ranged attack was enough to already damage it. At the ready, brother, Arister tapped Gallen's shoulder twice. That was the signal he had been awaiting since they arrived. Standing up on Rogog, balance unshaken, Gallen leapt off just as Rogog reached the dust-bearers. A quick roll later and the commander was on his feet, katana still hidden in its sheath. The dust-bearers closed in on Gallen, but none were willing to make the first strike in spite of their overwhelming number advantage. They exchanged glances with each other, waiting for someone to make the first move. Gallen held his stance, appearing like a statue if not for the light puffs that came from his breath. "Now!" a large green org shouted. 5 dust-bearers, all a full head taller than Gallen, with muscles twice as large, jumped toward him. Simple, Gallen thought with a smirk invisible beneath the helmet that left only his eyes detectable. The orgs were only feet from him when the commander spun and weaved through their assault. A shimmer flashed from his waist as his katana finally left its sheath. In a single strike, one of the orgs took a wound through its stomach, gushing blood. Turning on a heel, Gallen ducked under the swing of an org hammer and struck back, the blade whistling as it sliced through a leg. 2 down. Another dove over top of him to hold him down. Gallen jumped to dodge his foe, who slammed into the dirt. The commander thrust his sword into the base of its neck. The final 2 flanked Gallen and swung their hammers from both sides. Gallen bent his knees and sprang into the air, his body twisting around the hammers. As he fell back to the ground, he held out his sword with one arm and let his momentum carry it through the neck of one org. The last one dropped its hammer and held its hands up. "I surrender to you, executioner." "There is no mercy for those who deny the white flame," Gallen answered. The audacity of a dust-bearer to parley for his life only when he was defeated showed their true cowardice. Valazar would be better off without creatures like this one staining its lands. The commander darted forward as the org attempted to run. Its hoofed foot had not even touched the ground before Gallen cut a gash into its back. Scarlet blood stained its green skin as it gasped, bent over, and fell face first into the dirt, soaking the ground with its blood. More dust-bearers tried to swarm Gallen, but the rest of his army had caught up. Arrows were shot, swords were thrust, and matchlocks were fired, dropping any who dared get close to him. Dorn rammed into more of them, crushing those unable to get out of the way. While his enemies were being cut down around him, Gallen wiped his sword in the crease of his right arm, which had a layer of black cloth fastened over the white metal. Confident that his unit and the phalanxes had control over the battle, Gallen scanned the area for his target. Closing his eyes, he sensed its malice. Concentrating on that feeling, he pinpointed its origin to the right of the fighting, but it was rapidly approaching him. Then a house lining the town center splintered and crumbled as an org smashed through it. It ran on all fours with its head cocked and teeth bared. It was far more beast than org. "There you are, cur," Gallen said, turning his body toward it. Just as Gallen was drawn to the demon spawn, he knew that it was also drawn to him. The org pushed itself to its feet like a limp puppet. Its head rose after its body. In its right hand was a broadsword covered in black fire, one of the forbidden Varian weapons that remained after the Terror War 5 centuries ago. The dark flames licked the air around it, creating a cold void that Gallen could feel the closer it got. Its head twitched as it ran forward, its entire upper body leaning as if pulled by something. A phalanx reached it before Gallen, preparing to fight it. "Get away from it," Gallen shouted. He would have tried to save the poor soul, but he already knew he was too far away to stop the Carian. The org opened its mouth to let out a low hiss before its body twisted unnaturally, and the sword swung down at the soldier. The phalanx held up his blade to block it. What normally would have been a successful defense was feeble against the Carian. The power from the broadsword shattered the blade into metallic splinters and cut through the phalanx in the same motion. Such a waste. No regular warrior could best a Carian, one possessed by the power of a Varian weapon. All non-Catharos were told that repeatedly. Gallen held out his katana as the Carian twisted its neck toward him. He bent his mind towards slaying the Carian, allowing his determination to spread from his heart and through his fingers. In response, his sword ignited in flames of gold. "Catharos!" The org muttered with a distant growl. The voice sounded like it was whispered in Gallen's ear. It lumbered toward him, its sunken eyes flaring at the sight of his burning blade. The clock had begun ticking now that Gallen had used his Anargia. He had to end the fight before it sapped all his strength. "Get it done, Gallen. We'll take care of the rest." Aristair sped past Gallen, holding a child behind him with one arm as he steered Rogog. You need not ask. This fight will be over, Gallen said aloud, gripping his weapon in both hands, pointed toward the Carian. Alkatharos, die! The org threw itself at Gallen and lunged. Gallen leapt to the side and spun, keeping his stance. The enemy fumbled before standing up and screeching, then charged once more, this time on 2 legs. Its eyes flashed black as it ran. Expecting another lunge, Gallen prepared to jump to one side. However, the org swung low. The commander dropped to the ground and rolled. A horn on his helmet caught the swing and severed completely. The Carian swung again. Gallen tried to put distance between them, but his enemy kept closing the gap. Another strike. Gallen ducked to the right. There it was, his opening. In a flash, Gallen flicked his sword forward, cutting halfway through its gut. Before Gallen recovered his posture, the maddened org fell to the ground with a thump, casting dust into the air. The flames around Gallen's katana dissipated. His left arm tightened, but it did not hurt. Good, he thought. The fight was far too quick for the pain of using a Nargia to set in. He was not eager to endure more scouring on his hand. The commander sheathed his blade and pushed himself to his feet. Holding his arm, he walked over to the org and turned it over. Its mouth lay wide and drooling. The cursed broadsword lay next to it. Aristair and Rogog ran up to the commander. Instead of greeting them, Gallen bent down to pick up the broadsword. The Alkatharos would destroy it once they brought it back to the capital city. However, Aristair had already hopped off the wolf's back and swiped it before Gallen could touch it. He never let Gallen touch the Varian weapons. I'm not a youngling anymore, Gallen scoffed. I'm capable of holding a forbidden weapon. Aristair picked up the broadsword in a cloth and wrapped it, careful to cover every inch of the dark blade so that none of it was visible. We've been over this. If a single touch is enough to turn someone mad, then you're the last person who needs to come into contact with it. How many are we up to now? Gallen asked, cleaning his blade once more before sheathing it at his side. That was always the answer. It made some sense, but Gallen believed his brother was chasing greater recognition from the Alkatharos. Aristair held up his open palm. 5. That leaves only 2 remaining before we can put this all behind us. After years of looking for weapons left behind from the Terror War, the end was in sight for the brothers. What began as an overnight rebellion sprung in all corners of Valazar had escalated to all-out war thanks to these accursed armaments. Gallen and Aristair's sacred task, appointed by the Alkatharos himself, would soon see its end. Be sure to get that fixed. Aristair flicked the severed horn on Gallen's helmet. Gallen smacked his brother's hand away and began searching among the dead dust-bearers. As the younger brother searched, the older one crossed his arms and rolled his eyes. Gallen, the day is won. Take a moment and rest. I cannot, Gallen answered while he continued searching. He dug through the bodies to find anything related to Soraya. A set of papers, an insignia, a tattoo. Are you certain about this whole traitor angle of yours? Aristair stretched his arms behind his head and cracked his neck. Gallen ignored him and continued to sift through the slain. His older brother never believed it once the thought was posed, but Gallen believed. More importantly, the Alkatharos did too. As such, he made it his goal to find anything about someone who betrayed the Lordship. The Dustbearers had always managed to catch them off guard. If anything, this latest ambush was proof. The captain was right. How could such an army have gotten this far into Lordship territory? Gallen was convinced. Someone in their ranks was unfaithful, and they were going to pay for it.
Wow. That was a lot. We should talk about
good
the
a lot,
magic.
good a lot, or bad a lot?
No. I love audiobooks and I like military fantasy and military sci-fi. So
there you go.
It's right up my alley.
Perfect.
I don't know why I like these things, but I do. I enjoy them so much. I have no military background at all.
No, me neither.
But so let's talk about the magic system. So we've got these weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear about the magic system. How does it work, or how does it not work?
The central magic system is this concept of a Nargia, and essentially how it works is there are certain individuals who can channel this power, and when they grip weapons, it manifests itself as like a spiritual kind of fire that comes from their weapons. if they use it too long, they will like scar their weapon arm. So there's sort of a trade-off with it. The power originated with the Alkatharos, the chosen one. He, as someone chosen by the divine, he had that power innately, and it was unique to him. What he could do is sort of transfer a portion of that to other people. So when he established his lordship, he established also this ritual where he would pick his best soldiers and grant them that power. Some of the people who were chosen for that, they died upon getting that power. Some lived, and those that lived became what they call the Catharos. Hence, the Alkatharos is like them but greater, and then Catharos is like the lesser version of that. So the Catharos, they have flames of gold with their weapons, and the Alkatharos, his whole shtick is it's like white fire. So it's kind of like a white hot flame, a pure, untainted, and the gold is sort of represents like this isn't a perfect version of that, and it's not as powerful, but it's a piece of what comes from him.
Okay, who is the divine? Do we not know, or is there like many? Is it we monotheism? We in polytheism?
I don't address the religion in this simply because it is so far removed from that, and the Alkatharos in sort of becoming a tyrant has meddled with history a bit.
I see.
So he's sort of taken on this role of a theocracy where he sits at the top. So there may be some offhand mentions of a larger mythology, but it's something that's largely been stripped away from Valazar, because the Alkatharos is he's at the top saying it doesn't matter who exists above me, whether I know they exist or not, because it's me. Like, I'm the guy. I saved the world. I have the power to break the world apart. I'm all there is, essentially.
Gotcha. And that's interesting. So we've got that. We've got the magic coming from that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So on the flip side, there's the Carian in that first chapter, and he's got the sword with the black fire. So the black fire comes from what were called. I'll have to give you a little bit of history.
Sure, go ahead. We like history here.
500 years before the events of the Fifth Commander, the Alkatharos was a boy, and he went on his own chosen one journey, and he had this power of Anargia with the white flame. His adversary was called. They don't often repeat his name, but they refer to him in the history books as the Dark Terror, and he's sort of this unholy, unimaginable Lovecraftian monster who was able to manifest some darker version of this Anargia, and that's where the black fire comes from.
Is there supposed to be balance? Is that why we have the dark one and we have the so they're both kind of chosen in a way.
In a way, yes.
Sort of balance.
Yes, absolutely. So it was the Dark Terror who came first.
Okay.
And that's when the gods chose the Alkatharos and said, we need to counteract this because this is going to throw everything off balance.
So why did they let the Dark Terror get power?
Or
was that an accident?
That was like
man getting fire from Prometheus. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it did.
The Dark Terror exists, and I don't address a lot of that's what
sequels
lore.
Are for.
Right, exactly. I don't address a lot of the lore of the Dark Terror. I've got some stuff planned around that.
Right.
But it comes from a plane of existence that is not within Valazar. So
Okay.
it
So we
exists.
have multiple planes, not just the
Correct.
one. Okay.
Correct. And so it emerges with this power, and it's okay, well, we need to choose something to counteract that. And that's where the Alkatharos comes from. While the Dark Terror waged his war, he had an elite group of several specific chosen individuals, and they were called Varian. And they were very, very tormented, manipulated warriors, and they were given like fragments of his power, similar to how the Alkatharos can grant power, but probably more extreme, because the Varian were tied to his existence. The Alkatharos couldn't slay the Dark Terror until all the Varian were dead, because if even one Varian was alive, they would, with having a piece of the Dark Terror's power, they would be able to go and raise him again. So, and because those weapons still persisted despite a lot of the Varian dying, the weapons themselves still hold like a small fraction of that, and that's why they're as strong as they are. So these weapons have reemerged, and these are ancient, dark, forbidden weapons that were used to do horrible things centuries ago, and now they've reemerged. And so the Alkatharos is saying, you commanders, you guys need to go find these and bring them to me so that I can destroy them, because it's almost like he's traumatized despite being an immortal godlike being. You think about what a lot of Chosen One characters go through, and it would be traumatizing. It would be like, it would cause you to lose sleep. It would cause you to have panic attacks. And he was essentially a kid when it all happened. So he hears about these forbidden weapons, and he's like terrified in his mind. It's like, we need to address this right now. But the catch-22 with the Dust Bearers using the Varian weapons is that they don't have anyone who can wield them. And so when someone touches them, they just go absolutely bonkers and just become just rage monsters brandishing these destructive weapons around, just causing chaos.
Wow. That's wild. So in the sequels, we might get into some of that, or
yeah. So I can talk a little bit about that. So when my first draft of the Fifth Commander, my goal was to make it standalone. I wanted to, and the first draft actually was the complete story from beginning to end. It started with Gallen and his position within the Lordship, and then where he ends up, and it kind of tied a nice little bow on it. And that was about 110,000 words, which a bit on the long side for a debut, but not long enough that I felt the need to split it up.
I mean, my debut was 165,000
right.
words. But that was
Nice.
in 2016, so yeah.
When I went back to the edit, both halves of, by the time I got to the halfway point, it was at around 85,000 words. And I, because again, talking about the world building and how that was difficult for me, I really focused on that in the first edit. And as I started to flesh things out, I realized this story is a lot bigger than I initially anticipated. So I decided I'm just going to write it out and see where I get. And once I reached the halfway point, and I knew, and I always kind of had an idea, if I have to cut it, this is where I'm going to cut it. This makes the most sense. And when I got to that point, and I was broaching, 85, 90,000 words, I decided it probably gets cut here. For just as a debut, I think that made the most sense for me. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a two-parter, just to kind of, I don't want people to think I'm bait and switching them like, hey, buy this book and then get the second one. But it really, you know, there's a clear arc for especially Gallen in that first book, The Fifth Commander, and then and then that kind of changes at the start of the sequel. So yeah, there is a sequel already in the works. The first draft of the sequel is done. I was working on the second draft primarily, and then I realized I probably should finalize the first book before I start to finish the second one. That way I make sure I have everything squared away, which is kind of how I ended up here, where now this book is essentially done and almost, you know, my editor's almost done with it. So I'm essentially ready to go with it. And now that that's kind of buttoned up, then I can go and focus on the sequel and really, honestly, give it the attention and level of detail that I think it deserves, because like, you know, much like the Fifth Commander, it has a lot of those great epic battles. It continues that military style. So there's a lot addressed in the Fifth Commander, but there's certainly a lot to be addressed in the sequel, and then other potential books related to it that I'm toying around with.
Right. So I guess the answer to the question, is it a book, is it a standalone or a series, is it is going to be a series.
Yes, kind of. Because the way that it's being written now, the series will probably be a two-parter. It will be The Fifth Commander and its sequel. After that, my goal is to leave it open-ended enough that I can explore follow-ups to that following Gallen, or depending on what happens in that sequel, follow other characters. But the idea is to use Valazar as the foundation to tell all kinds of stories.
Oh, okay, so we're staying in the same world, and we're going to widen the lens and see what else is out there that's interesting, that calls to you.
That's the goal, because world building is as hard for me as it is. I don't really want to do it twice.
Yeah.
And now that I kind of have this really solid place with a set of rules and lore and history and characters and people and races, I'm like, this is enough that I can work with. And
yeah, and it's fun to evolve it, to take it, to see where it goes, because worlds don't stay, even our world doesn't stay static.
Right, exactly.
The climate now is very different from what it was when I was a kid. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like, it wouldn't be 80 degrees in April in New York, which I heard is going to be next week, which that we've never had that before.
I've thought a lot about, you know, what kind of twists on fantasy could we do? And I'm thinking, well, what if I did a thriller in this world? What if I did a horror in this world? Just kind of thinking about what that would look like. You know, I can approach these different genres, but just do it in the lens of fantasy, just to have some kind of different spin on it. So I'm still kind of toying around with larger plans, but I haven't fleshed them out too much, because I'm mostly focused on the Fifth Commander right now. That's where most of my energy is going.
So is the sequel going to be the Sixth Commander? I had to ask.
No. That would be funny, but no. I have a title that I'm pretty satisfied with. I have a a structure, a first draft. The title is going to be much better than the Fifth Commander, or it's going to be much better than the Sixth Commander.
That's what I would have probably called it. I'm pretty literal.
That's funny. I if I were writing a comedy series, I might do that, because I fought with myself a long time about the title of the book, and it took me a while to decide. I thought about, I played around with so many titles. I played around with Tyranny of the White Flame.
Oh, that's fun.
I played around with The Pale Inferno, all kinds of things. Stuff that was.
I like the first one.
Yeah, stuff that's really aspirational.
Yeah.
But
You can do that with fantasy.
yeah, and you can get a little creative.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, what I wanted was something that represented. So I didn't want to make the title about the Alkatharos because he's the antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
and while he plays a big role in the story, it's not about him. You know, this is Gallen's story. It's Gallen's saga. It's Gallen's arc. So I had to come up with a title that reflected that, something that kind of gave you a taste of what it was. And I think what I landed on gave you a taste of that this is Gallen's story, and the title alone gives you some kind of this kind of a military, this is a military title, so it's maybe there's some battles going on, and then obviously you've seen the cover, so that working together. So yeah, titles are hard. I work in marketing, and I write headlines all day, and those are hard. Writing a title for this book was even harder.
Yeah,
no, I had to get it
titles
right.
are hard. I 100% agree.
I asked a lot of opinions about. I'm like, these are all the titles I'm thinking of. What do you think? And everyone had a different opinion, so that didn't help me at all. So I just
like
had
the tyranny of the white flame. I might have to use that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where. We don't have a white flame
or
tyranny at the moment, but who knows?
But we could, yeah.
Yeah. We could. It could appear somewhere. The world is evolving.
We'll co-author a novel about some white fire just so we can use the title.
I mean, I'm sure I can put it somewhere. I have a ton of magic. So.
For sure.
And then in the world, like, do you have enchanted forests? Do you have enchanted places, magical places, or is it more like earthy and like down to earth, like
it's
mundane?
It's more.
I mean, mundane gets a bad rap, but like not magical place. Like, cause some fantasy series have that. Like even the Lord of the Rings doesn't really have too many magical places.
Right. It is more grounded, but so within it there are a lot of fantastical things. Like one of the places Gallen goes to in the Fifth Commander is this continent that was so. Valazar used to be one massive continent, but when the Alkatharos and the Dark Terror fought during the Terror War, the fight was so drastic that it actually split the continent apart into 5 smaller continents. One of those continents took the most damage and was fractured even more into like a series of islands and land masses. And that place it's very as a result it's very diverse from a nature perspective. So there's a race of creatures there, and their whole shtick was that they were once people, but they figured out how to communicate with the elements, and they learned how to simply by touching an element, whether it be plants or earth or water or like magma in a volcano, they were able to manipulate them. And so over time, they became almost their entire bodies are now constituted of these elements. And so they live on this continent where the landscape is so diverse, and there's a large forest that almost has like a personality of its own, because they've them being there sort of like let the will of the earth come through. And Gallen, he gets taken to this city that's in the heart of this forest where these people live, but it's hard to tell that it's at first glance that it's even a city, because these creatures hold so much respect for it that they use it. They sort of like build their city around it and use the landscape and the trees and the earth to construct their homes and their protection without trying to disturb it, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. We didn't really talk about the races.
Yeah.
We've got the humans. We've got, you said you had a lot of different races, and are they like, is it just, obviously there's armies and things, and are the armies made up of like one type of people, many different types of people? Do people mix in? like we have, like, our cities are kind of multicultural, the large ones anyways, where you've got all different sorts of people from all different places, or is it more homogenous? Like, how's that work? Wait, I don't hear you. Is it me who did something, or you?
All right.
Now I hear you. Okay.
Perfect.
For a minute there, I was
Awesome.
afraid it was me that I did something because I had some
I don't know.
wonkiness earlier.
My mic just cut out, and so I just unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Okay.
So
I mean, that works.
Valazar used to be very segmented in
Mhm.
regard to its races, and each race kind of had its own spot. After the Terror War and Valazar sort of entered this Reconstruction era, now that it was once a massive continent that was now split apart, you know, entire cities were destroyed as a result of you know, if you think about it, if an entire continent fractures its seams, you know, you've disrupted entire ways of life.
Mhm.
So what happened then was that there was a lot more mixing of these different races. So even between the two armies, so you have the Alkatharos' army and the Lordship, and then you have the Dustbearer rebels. They're largely mixed of most of the same races. There are
Okay.
a couple that manage to exist outside of it. Those creatures that control the elements are one of them. There's another race that they're isolationists, so they are largely hands off in the war. You won't really see them in the Fifth Commander.
What draws each group to either the rebels or the Alkatharos? I'm gonna pronounce that wrong.
Alkatharos. So some of it is there's a lot of tension between the Alkatharos and the rebels. So the Alkatharos promises protection, essentially protection, and
from what?
So Valazar can be very hostile, a very hostile environment. There's a lot of, like, we'll call it megafauna. So there are large and dangerous creatures in Valazar. There are also, you know, even outside of the walls of the Lordship, there's a lot of infighting that goes on. So the Lordship promises, you know, if you come here, if there's ever a war, if there's ever a battle that comes to your home, our soldiers will come to defend you. You don't have to defend yourself. If someone ever comes to conquer you, we'll fight for you. On the flip side of that, people who are within the Lordship, they have certain obligations. Like, soldiers can come in and take crops or food from them, or they can take profits from them to fund the armies that the Alkatharos then sends out. And it's, well, you can't argue with us because we essentially serve the god of this world. So if you don't like it, take it up with him. But we are morally in the right here, is essentially the positioning of this. Some people think it's worth that protection is worth that. Other people do not. And on the Dustbearer side, there's a lot more. So those in charge of the Dustbearers have some relationship, or had some sort of relationship with the Alkatharos, and they're now diametrically opposed for a lot of reasons. And on the Dustbearer side, they're obviously fighting a war. So there's a lot of, like, we need money, we need funding, all these things. However, they're not ruling with an iron fist. It's a lot more, it's coordinated, but the culture is a lot different, where it's you are encouraged to pursue your own goals. you're not forced to fight in the war if you really don't want to. If you're a liability, we're not going to throw you on the front lines. Whereas, you know, in the Lordship, it's, oh, you live in the capital and you have a child that's the age of 6. We're going to train them now so that by the time they're old enough to competently hold a weapon, we can just send them out to fight. So it's a very militaristic, theocratic state, and some people are all about that. You know, no hate to them, I suppose, but you can
Apparently
imagine
you're not on that side.
I surprisingly no, I'm not on that side. So
You made it so you can break it.
Right. I spend some time in, so Gallen actually spends time in both, and in both areas, both the Lordship and the Dustbearer territory. And what I demonstrate in those areas is the differences between them, and the differences in the culture, and the differences in how the people interact with each other, how the regular people interact with soldiers, how, you know, how the regular people interact toward Gallen in the Lordship, how they react toward him in the Dustbearer territory, just to paint some of this dichotomy, because there's a lot that goes into, you know, why would you have people rising against the Alkatharos? And the other part of that is, you know, remember the Alkatharos, even though he's the chosen one, he is the bad guy in this. Whether he obviously doesn't think so, but he's definitely the villain. And there are definitely people who know that. It's not, even though he's tried to bury that, there are people who know what he's done and were there to see it. And they know that whatever is coming out of his mouth is full of crap. So they're going to be preparing in the background to try and stop him, because they know that it's, you know, if push comes to shove, he'll just burn the whole world to the ground if it means that he doesn't have to deal with people who don't like him, essentially.
Getting vibes from the Wheel of Time, because
at
one point Brand Althor gets a bit, you know, the power drives you mad, and he
I just started reading that, actually. I read the first one. I don't know how, but I hadn't encountered the Wheel of Time until a few years ago, and I started reading it a couple months ago. I finished Eye of the World and started The Great Hunt, but it is kind of like that, where Rand, you know, he struggles with.
It'll make you feel better about long books, because Robert Jordan's books are like, you know, if you put your book next to it, it's going to give your book complex. It's going to feel very small compared to the size of a standard Wheel of Time book.
I picked up Eye of the World and realized it was 800 pages. And I'm like,
long.
What in the world is this? That is insane.
Yeah.
But you gotta respect it.
Yeah.
You gotta respect it. I'm like, okay. My dad, he's a big audiobook guy. And
when Robert Jordan takes you on a journey, he takes you on a journey.
Like, I'm gonna take you on a journey, pal, and we're gonna go through every single stone on the way,
and every town, and every grass blade,
every town, every inn, every innkeeper, every bartender at the inn. You know, you're gonna meet them all, buddy, and you're gonna like it.
It makes it feel more real, like it's a real world, because we don't jump to, okay, now we're in the next country. You know, you are with that. It's also like the Lord of the Rings. Like they walked, was it 2,000 or 3,000 miles to Mordor? You are with them walking in the book. Every step, every song. So they're both fantasy books, but they are also travelogues of fantasy worlds that are fully fleshed out and realized with real distances, and it takes time to go places. People do live there and have lives, and you intersect with them. And
that's fun. I think I would find a travelogue like that very difficult to write. Personally, I think it would be hard for me to keep coming up with towns and places and people and without making them seem wrote,
Yeah.
or like it's just the same thing. You know, it takes a special kind of talent to make it all interesting.
I wonder sometimes how many towns did he not tell us about? How many
my
towns
gosh.
and innkeepers and servants and
oh my goodness.
wait staff? How many of these exist in his mind that we never went to in the books? Because the amount of places, and I only got up through book 8 and then I didn't read any further. How much of that is sitting in his head that never made it into the books? I always wonder that, because what's in the books is always the tip of the iceberg. Like, what didn't make it in because he didn't think there was enough room.
I go down the Tolkien rabbit holes a lot about what kinds of stories did Tolkien have prior to his death. And I'm like, man,
the Silmarillion, that's what he was working on. That was his masterwork.
There's so much more that we never got to know, and so much more about Middle Earth. Like, I want to know more about what that sequel to Lord of the Rings was going to be like.
Oh, you can. There's the histories of Middle Earth. There's his sons and his grandson have been really good about taking his notes and trying to put them together so that you can get an idea of there is actually part of that draft. I don't remember which book it's in, but you can read. It was the shadow of
the
something. Shadow of something.
Shadow of the past?
I want to say that's what it is, but I feel like I'm confusing it with something else.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
But he stopped writing it because it'd be depressing, because
it would show sad.
It would show how, and I feel like he was kind of prescient, because he'd be writing about what we're living through in our day and age now, not with nuclear weapons, obviously, but where things we had, good leadership, and now, hard times breed strong leaders, good times breed weak leaders, and we're in the good times breed weak leaders, and the sequel that he was that he thought about, that would be the Middle Earth we'd be reading about, the Gondor that has had good times, and King Elisar has passed, and now we are dealing, we're hundreds of years down the road, and they've had their good times, and now we have weak leaders and a resurgence of the cults of Morgoth and all of that, and it was just too depressing to write, so he didn't do it. But we are unfortunately living it.
that is true, unfortunately.
Yeah, so hopefully, we'll come through this and have good leaders. And soon, really soon.
Maybe. In the meantime, I'm gonna go read Return of the King again and just pretend that Aragorn is leading the country.
Yeah, he really is like an example of what it means to be the best.
Oh my gosh, what a guy.
Yeah, and if more people could be like that and not be afraid to care about, other people, to show how much they care. So I think that's what makes the Lord of the Rings books and the movies so great, is that you have these strong, tough guys, and they're not afraid to be like, hey, I really care about you. Are you okay? And in dealing with, with Eowyn, especially, like, I see you, I know you're a tough lady, but we do need you to, we don't have anybody else to do some of these jobs, to watch over these people while we are away. We're leaving this to you, respecting their strength and that they are, a warrior in their own right. But yeah, just also that ability to not be afraid to show, hey, I care about you. That scene where he's like, says to Frodo, I would have gone with you to the, to Mount Doom,
to the end. Yeah.
To the fires of Mordor. Yeah. But then realizing that he can't do that. He can't go with Frodo. Frodo needs to do this on his own. That's not what his place is. And I know people argue that they don't like that in the Peter Jackson movies that he gave Aragorn an arc. I actually prefer the Aragorn in the movies, because in the book, he's just kind of arrogant and he's not interesting and you don't really like him. But in the movies, he's humble and he doesn't want to be king, and having to decide that, well, maybe I would be a good king. I've seen all this horrible stuff. I'm not going to do these things. Maybe this is the path that I need to be on. I think we need more people like that who are not afraid to, especially men. We have such a crisis of mental health for them, and just a lot of really toxic. The whole manosphere is very toxic. I think if guys could just be like, "Hey, I really care about you," to other guys that they care about, and being able to be open with them about things like that, could really make the world a better place.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a lot of those same thoughts when I was writing the Fifth Commander, and so I've got an older brother, and he and I, growing up, we did not get along very well. After we became adults, and we're married, and I've got a kid, and he's got kids, we get along great. He's probably one of the best friends I've possibly ever had, and probably ever will have. We're very close, and we share a lot with each other, and we hold each other accountable. And we'll talk on the phone, and when we get off the phone, we're like, "Hey, love you, brother. Talk to you later." And part of that was what inspired me to write Gallen and his brother as commanders. That was sort of like the impetus there, because yeah, it would be cool to show that. Now, Gallen, in a lot of ways, he's almost the last person you would want to be the protagonist of a story like this, simply because he's so ignorant to his own emotions, and he struggles so much. And Arister, on the other side, really doesn't. And I'm sure you got a taste of that in the first chapter, where Arister, he's a little more lighthearted, and Gallen, he's pretty self-serious. But
that gives him room to grow, to realize that you can't be that serious all the time, and you can't take things that or you're going to break under the strain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's powerful, and I think that will resonate, because Gallen, I've gotten feedback. They're like, "Hey, at the beginning of the book, Gallen's kind of an asshole. Does he stay that way?" Like, well, no, because then it wouldn't be interesting. But yeah, you're not really supposed to like him at the start, but that's also kind of the point, because he's, as far as people loyal to this empire built on lies, he's one of the poster children. And it's far more interesting to take a loyalist and deconstruct them than to take someone who's on the fence and deconstruct them.
You should read The Black Company, because it's dark fantasy. There's a lot of black humor, but they are working for, it is a company of soldiers. They're in this fantasy world, and they work for the ultimate evil, and they're just trying to survive. And it's really good. And just what you were describing, I was getting vibes from that.
Yeah. Okay.
I love the series.
I'll have to give it a look. I have so many books on my read list. It is insane. Because when I started writing again, I realized I haven't read enough fantasy books, so I just need to read all of them. And I've read
You missed
so many
it. They
books.
recently had a humble bundle, but it ended where you can get the whole series. I, of course, bought it, even though I have most of the books already in either audiobooks or physical books. I was like, well, I don't have them all on ebook, so.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I tend to prefer physical books, because I work in marketing, so I stare at a screen all day, and I do play video games. So then I also stare at a screen when I'm home, and I'm like, I need to do something where I'm not staring at a screen. I'm gonna burn my eyes out before I'm 30.
Oh yeah. You'll end up with computer glasses, which I just recently had to get because I look at screens too much.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm 100%.
Well, check it out. They definitely have it in books, but I think for what you're writing, I think you'd find that very interesting.
What's the name of it again?
It's The Black Company.
I
can't remember the name of the first book. It's by Glenn. I'm gonna Google it. It's Glenn Cook. I was gonna say Glenn Close. I was like, no, that's the actress.
That's the actress.
It's Glenn Cook. Yeah, The Black Company. they serve a sorceress who is probably evil. But they serve it anyways.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, that looks.
I think you'd find that very
Grimdark
interesting.
military. Okay.
Yeah, I think you might find some fun inspiration or some fun parallels, and it might give some ideas for it. And I love it. It's a fun series, and I feel like it would resonate really well with you. It's a good it might be a good what's the word that I'm looking for?
A comp.
That's it. I was like the C word. Comp title.
I hesitate to do a comp with grimdark fantasy because the Fifth Commander it's not grimdark. Even in my campaign, you'll see I use the term dark.
I don't think it really counts as grimdark. I haven't read every single book. I've read many of them, but I don't generally like grimdark fantasy. Yeah. I like the Black Company. Like, it's not depressing at all. There's a lot of black humor. There's a lot of camaraderie with the soldiers, and you're very much in their heads in the battle, and they're just trying to survive and put forward whatever their objective is. I really enjoy those books. I don't remember them. They're not dark and depressing like other grimdark stories I've tried to read.
Yeah, grimdark is like, it's pretty.
This is probably at the end, the lighter end of it.
Yeah, the Fifth Commander is maybe grimdark adjacent, but it's not. I wouldn't call it grimdark. Dark, give it a read. Dark, I think, is fair, but definitely not grimdark.
I'd say give it a read and then see what you think. But I feel like that you could even, maybe it's a lighter version of it or something.
Sure.
But I think there's a lot of similarities between what you're doing and what Glenn Cook did.
Yeah, I'll add it to the ever-growing list of books I need to read.
Yeah. I'm glad I can. That's my goal. Every episode is to add to everybody's TBRs, mine, yours, the listeners.
Done.
I'm bad for your TBR.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I before we connected, I pretty obsessively look at Kickstarter just to see where my campaign is ranking. And as I'm looking through upcoming fantasy releases, I've seen your thumbnail a lot, and I'm like, man, that's
my friend made it. She didn't like my banner. She's like, this is not getting across the story that you've told me.
Yeah.
So she sent me this. She's like, put this on there. Use this. And I was like, all right.
Okay, sure.
If you're gonna make a banner for me, and then fine, sure.
I look at it and I'm like, oh man, that's cool.
It's humorous fantasy. There are dragons. There are lots of magical creatures. There is lots of magic and mayhem because I like magic and mayhem. That's my thing.
There you go.
But it is not dark fantasy.
You've written quite a few books.
Yeah, about I think 35 are published at last count.
I hear people like I wrote like 47 books, and I'm just sitting here on my first one. I'm like, how?
It starts with one, and then you write a sequel, and then there's characters want to go on a side quest, so you write the side quest, and then they're like, but we can't complete the whole story for the side quest in one book, so now you have to write a sequel to the side quest, and then you end up with multiple series set in the same world, and then it just keeps going from there, and they just keep doing things.
So there's hope for me. I might.
It just keeps spiraling.
I might have a few dozen more books in me then.
I didn't think there would be 35 books.
I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm spending so much time on this first book. It's taken me so long to like actually, from the time I started writing to now, actually like getting a book out. It's super risky, and it's a huge deal, and it's scary. And to do all this work and spend money on an editor and get a cover person to get all this stuff in motion, and now I'm sitting here like, man, some people do this like 50 more times,
but I
can't even comprehend what that's like.
But like, I started writing my debut book in 2014 and published it in 2016, and then just I'd only do between 3 and 7 books a year. And the 7 is some books the story has less characters, so it is not super long. And some books end up with every character wanting to do everything, and they are longer. So those years there are less books, and over 10 years time, you keep doing that. I finish one book, start the next one. You end up racking up the books.
I imagine that the first one's taking me as long as it is because it's the first. And
yes, you have to learn the process.
Learn the process. Learn my own process.
Mostly, you have to learn when is it done, when to stop. That's the thing with debut books. That every author has to figure out is when is it done, and then after that you start. Now that you've finished a book and you know where the done is, the next book, it gets a little easier to know when is this book done, when is me continuing to work on it going to make it worse, not better. And as you keep going, eventually you get much better at that, and you get much more efficient at putting it together, so that you don't need to spend as much time at the end second guessing yourself. And then you just keep rolling along, and then reading
any portion of my novel aloud is so difficult for me, because every time I do it, I'm like, man, I should change that. Man, I should change that. Man, I should change that. And I really have to just, at some point, I'm like, you're just editing around yourself in circles at some point, Joshua. You just need to, if the editor's looking at it and you accept their changes and you tweak things as you accept their changes, that's it. Don't change it anymore. You've written this thing like 4 times. Leave it alone. That's
what it is. You need the confidence to say, no, this is complete. I'm going to stop here. And when you're a new baby author with no books out, you're reading other people's books and you're not looking at yours objectively.
For sure.
And so you can always go back and do another version or something in the future. So you just have to at some point be like, no, I'm going to stop here and see what people who are not inside my head think of the book.
That's another hard thing I've been running into is it's difficult to get people to read a book, especially one that is not published. It's very challenging to do.
Yes. Nobody wants to beta read or anything. Everybody's like, just tell me when it's done. I want to read it when it's finished. It's like, but I need
your feedback.
The opinions. I need the opinions before it's done, so that I stop second guessing it. And does character X really need that story arc that they really want in this book?
That's
already 150k words. Can we stop here and not do that, or do it in another book?
For those of you curious if the Fifth Commander is worth reading, the one person who actually finished reading, the only beta reader to actually finish it, was my grandma. And my grandma said that it's the greatest thing she ever read.
Wow.
So Joshua Olivieri's grandma recommends this book, 5 stars. She says you should go read it. So
wow, and grandmas are hard to they're definitely hard to please.
You think so? My grandma she's an angel.
I mean, my grandparents were hard to please.
My grandma, she bakes cookies and accepts, her currency is love and hugs, and all that kind of stuff. But she likes fantasy and she reads it. And so she got wind that I was writing one and agreed to be a beta reader. And she read it in like a week and called me and told me how much she loved it. So it's good enough for my grandma. So it's probably good enough for Kickstarter at this point.
Yeah. My mom reads my books, but she didn't used to read fantasy. She'd never read a fantasy book. So I originally had her read it because I wanted to know, are you confused? Am I clear about it? Not like, do you like it? Or, I mean, that's also great, but like, do you as someone who doesn't normally read fantasy books, do you understand? Am I being, because, it's my world, my magic, I've been reading and rereading it. I just wanted somebody who doesn't read fantasy to come back and there were places where she was confused or needed to be clear. And I feel like it made the book better because someone who doesn't normally read the genre read it. And I went back and fixed those things. And then she read it again and was like, now I understand. And I feel like that made it better. But now she's read so many of my books that I don't know that she's a good barometer for that anymore. She's reading other people's fantasy books. I've gotten her into the genre. So I'm like, I might need to find somebody else to be am I being clear? Are the characters confusing you with their mayhem?
Yeah, I run into that with my wife. She and I are very different, and she's our levels of creativity are diametrically opposed. I'm much more methodical, and she's a lot more. She just kind of like lays the tracks as she goes. So, and whereas high fantasy is more my thing, she's more into like urban fantasy.
Mhm.
And so she's always got something that she's working on. And so every now and again, I'll say, hey, I'm working on this. And she'll give me like all this feedback. And I'm like, we're so like our writing styles are so different that I have to at some point I'm like, I don't know that this is helpful anymore. And I don't know that my feedback's helping you at all, because if you gave me your story and I gave you mine, we would come up with completely different, what we wrote wouldn't be nothing close to what we envisioned in our own heads. So I've changed my wife's role from giving criticism. I've changed it to, okay, this book's basically done. Here's what I want from you. I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to say, this is amazing, Joshua. It's the greatest thing I've ever read. I can't believe that you wrote it. That's all I want to hear right now. So
And you need that sometimes to
absolutely.
hear that, because you start doubting yourself so much.
Oh my
that
gosh,
you need somebody to be like, no, it's good.
It's a cycle. And when I first started writing as a teenager, I joined a writers group, and I was obviously the youngest one in the group by quite a large margin. And the conventional wisdom, at least in this group at the time, it was like, well, you're not going to get published. Your writing needs a substantial amount of work. Oh, hang on. My cat needs to be let in. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So it's your writing needs a lot of work, which was true. It's hard to get published. You probably need more life experience. So it really was like a lot of discouragement. And
there's a lot of that, unfortunately, with critique groups. There's a lot of people, and the thing that to remember is people write for different reasons. And when you join a critique group, you have to be conscious of that. Like you have to ask people, like, why do you write? Where are you going? Because some people are just writing because they want to write the great American novel, and nothing they write in their mind will ever be good enough, and they're never going to go forward with that. And they're never going to finish anything because they want every sentence to be absolute perfection, to glow on the page. And some people are writing because they just enjoy it. They just want to get the story out. They don't intend to do anything with it. Some people are writing because they have, they like characters from someone else's, intellectual property, and they want to write fan fiction. It's all valid. And some people are writing their own unique stories that they do want to publish, but they only want to publish it if it can be published by X publisher. This way, they have a list of requirements. And some people are, just want to write the story and publish it and find their readers. And so you have to check what are the goals that each people have, because then you need to know when they give you feedback, you need to filter it. But they don't have the same goal as me. So if they start giving you, negative feedback about things where your goals and your path don't align, you can just not listen, because it's not for you. They're really speaking to themselves. That is a thing in critique groups. A lot of times they're not actually speaking to you. They're speaking to themselves and that part of them that they see in you or in your writing. So you have to check that. And so what you can listen to of their advice and what things you shouldn't, because you will come across people with all different goals. And the people you should listen to are the ones that are on a similar path as you, that have similar goals, that are doing it for similar reasons, because they're not going to sabotage you for the sake of it, because if you're both on a similar path, if they're sabotaging you, they're sabotaging themselves too, because if they're helping you, then they're also helping themselves. So that's the kind of the thing you want to. It's not easy to find. did have joined in the past many years ago writers groups, and that was what I found, is that it was just a broad cross section of people writing for all sorts of different reasons, and knowing. And if you don't know that someone is trying to write the great American novel, and they're spending 4 hours on every sentence and then deleting it and rewriting it the next day, and they're never going to make progress on anything, because their goal is to write the most amazing thing ever, whether it's only 4 paragraphs long, whether they never finish, it doesn't matter. The goal is what matters, and the journey towards it is what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
Then someone giving you advice from that perspective is not going to be as helpful as someone who is trying to do the same thing you are.
Yeah, and most of the folks that I used to be in writers group with, and I guess I'm not calling anyone out, and no disrespect to them, but most of them ended up, throwing their books up on Amazon, and they're like, well, I published a book and I didn't get any sales, so you can write a book, but you're not going to make any money off of it. Or people who didn't publish a book because of that, they want to write the next great American novel, and they just get stuck in this cycle of editing and whatnot. And I'm like, well,
and comparisonitis. Usually, if they're trying to write the great American novels, they're trying to compare themselves to Thoreau or Tolkien, and if they can't do it exactly the way that person did it, then it's not valid. That's what I've run into.
I played Final Fantasy as a kid and loved it, and thought that inspired me to write. And that's literally, it was a video game that inspired me to write, and the rest is history, I suppose.
That's great that you actually remember what inspired you to write. I've been writing since I actually learned, since I was like so little that I learned how to write my name, and then I started writing stories, and a world that I write about just started taking shape. And I have no idea what was the original spark for it, because I was so little. I have no idea where any of it came from, and I just kept writing about it over the years. And eventually I read a fantasy book I think I was 16 in high school. I found Mercedes Lackey's Valdemar books. And then I was like, wait, you can write these stories that I've been writing and telling people my entire life at this point. You can get paid to do this? Like, people want to read this? I had no idea. I had not read a fantasy book before that. Wow. I don't know how I never found The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or anything. I'm sure the library had it, but I never read it.
Fantasy's always been my dad's thing. So from a very early age, I'm dating myself a little bit, but I was very young when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, but my dad had read the books. So we were very entrenched in Lord of the Rings growing up, and it was
just awesome. I found the movies when I was in college when they came out.
The movies were just enchanting. And the books were enchanting, and I just
I'm jealous that you got to grow up with that. I did. I was 21 or 20 or 21 when the first movie came out, and I had never heard of the Lord of the Rings or Tolkien or anything before that. So
I was enthralled from the first moment, and you can probably see in the back, but I've got that Lego Rivendell set behind me, and it is
wow.
Oh my gosh.
I don't have anywhere to put it, so I've resisted the urge to buy it, because I have a small studio apartment and there's not room for it anywhere.
I made sure I had somewhere to put it before I picked it up for such a large purchase, but I was like, I gotta have that one. It's just too good. I was speaking to my mom actually prior to this. I said, hey, my mom, she knows I'm working on a book. She's seen the cover and all that. I said, hey, Mom, I'm going to be on a podcast to talk about the book. And she's like, oh, really? That's great. And I was antagonizing her a bit, because when I was a teenager, go back to some of the writing stuff, and I had started writing, and I was going to writers group and all that. And I told Mom, when I grow up, I would love to be a writer. That's what I want to do. And the first thing out of her mouth was, I think the local pizza place is hiring right now if you need a job. and it was so deflating, and we laugh about it now, because I work in marketing, so as far as I'm concerned, I make a living writing.
Yes.
And now that I'm working on this book, I said, hey mom, you know, do you want me to write in the book? I said, do I instead of dedicating the book to someone, do I just say, hey mom, I told you so?
I mean, you can do that. People do
And
all kinds of things in the
she
dedications.
laughed and she said, are you going to go on that podcast and talk about how your mom never supported you and that fueled your passion? And I'm like, yeah, keep it up, mom, keep it up. I just might.
I don't have that backstory. I
yeah.
mean,
Well, mom, if you're listening, I love you.
That's wild. I don't really have the parents being against writing. I was never going to make it my day job. So like,
right, yeah. Honest to goodness, they really just didn't know what to do with me, because they both came from like fairly blue collar
my parents
families.
too.
And you know, my brother and my sister were fairly, I will say, routine in that way, and I was always different, and they just didn't know what to do. So they're like, I don't know what to. They're like, we don't know how to help a kid who says he wants to be a writer. We don't know anything about that. So, so it's a lot of kind of figuring it out for myself, and that's kind of what's brought me here, and the whole Kickstarter for authors community and the book.
So you have found the community. I haven't seen you in the group, but if you weren't, I was going to, after this ended, give you the links and make sure that you come and join us, that you check out Anthea's book.
I'm in the group. I'm in the experienced one as well. And I saw you had a post up for a backer swap, and I commented on it. I was like, oh, hey, you know, we're doing the podcast. If you want to do a swap, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm definitely going to share your Kickstarter in my newsletter. I just have to, probably in May, because I've committed to a few other folks who have fantasy Kickstarters going up in April. So I think it's going to be May. I will definitely get it in there, separate from the podcast.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
But, I try to share things.
A lot of my writing journey has been just kind of, you know, paving a road that works for me, but following in the footsteps of people who've already done it. And this Kickstarter for authors community has been amazing, and just figuring out, because the hesitation with publishing a book is I don't want to just barf something up on Amazon, and because there's a lot of conventional wisdom like, well, your first book doesn't count. Your first book you give away for free, and then you have to write 3 more, and then maybe you start making, and then maybe you make sales, maybe you don't. And I'm like, with someone who's got a full-time job and a baby, and I'm like, I don't know that I can justify.
I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah, I
mean, I still give away the first book in my favorite series.
Sure,
it's worth it to me, because I mean, I just wrote. I'm trying to finish book 12, but the characters are fighting me.
If I had 35 books out, I would probably give away the 5th Commander. But as of right now,
it's your first book. You know,
for the first book, I'm like, I don't think I could do that. But you know, kind of figuring this out and reading stories about people who are like, no, I totally, you know, I published this book on Kickstarter. I did all these things, and it funded, and people liked it, and I built a community off of that sort of sustained itself into follow-up campaigns, to where I have this like consistent base where that actually likes what I have to put out there, and they're there to support me whenever I have something for them. And
it's two-way. It's not just them supporting you. They're also getting books that they really want to read and being part of the process. Has the great thing with doing it to Kickstarter, it means that we can work with printers who don't work with retailers. We can go, and they often offer options and things that we can't get from, you know, Amazon or from Ingram or the standard printers who service the retail market. And so you can do fun things like, you know, have color photos, you know, in things. You can do,
or the sprayed edges are big.
Yes, or the gold foil, which is my favorite. Putting gold foil on everything.
The foil is so
and and that's not a thing we can really do with
Right.
Amazon and other printers. And sometimes there's page limits. If you want to do a color book on Amazon, it can't be more than 600 pages, which I've run into being a problem because some books end up longer than others. But yeah, and it's and so you can do like a poll, or you can actually reach out and be like, hey, I have these two options. Like I was on I supported one author's Kickstarter, and they had enough orders that they could do a print run, which then opened it up to, they had all these options that you can do on a print run that couldn't get from the printers that do smaller batches. Like they had additional foil colors, and now they were like, well, I was going to do this color, but now that I can go with this other printer because we have enough order volume. We still want to stay with the original color that they had chosen from the limited palette, which is neat that you can vote on stuff like that.
I'm hoping.
I mean, not every Kickstarter has that, because not every Kickstarter gets enough backers for for those tiers where you can go to a printer that has more options. But sometimes it happens, and that's really cool.
I would love to get the velocity to do a print run like that.
Yes, me too.
I've looked into a lot of
I want
options.
the metallic inks in the worst way.
I want the sprayed edges. Oh my gosh, they look so great.
Well, you could there is a print on demand company called Bookfall, and they have the sprayed edges, and you can do very small order volumes with that. I use them for mine.
I've seen Bookfall. I've been comparing them and Ingram Spark on a cost basis. My number one priority is I want to try and keep costs manageable.
Yes, that's hard with the fancy.
For the backers, especially.
That's where I run into. That's the math that I'm trying to do for my own next Kickstarter, because the Bookvault's UK plant, which is what does all the foiling and the special, the edges and stuff. It's only their UK one.
Right.
So you not only are you paying in American dollars for something that they're charging you in British pounds? The exchange rate is against us, and then you are also the shipping, because it's coming from the UK to the US. So you get the exchange rate, you got the cost of it coming across the Atlantic and then getting into the US Postal Service. So like it's and at one point, sometimes you with the tariff shenanigans, sometimes you may have to there may also be a tariff on it. I had one order get caught in that. Because there was no tariff, and then there was a tariff, and I got an extra bill for my last Kickstarter for the tariff on the books, and like I wasn't expecting that, because when I placed the order, there wasn't one, and then when it came into the U.S. and got into the Postal Service, I got a bill from the U.S. Postal Service.
I've considered 48-hour books as well, if I get Velocity, because their facility is in Ohio, and I'm like an hour and a half away from their facility.
Oh, that's great.
I could just go pick them up, and they wouldn't charge me to ship. And the shipping's pretty expensive. And I'm like, well, shoot, if I get the Velocity and I can just go pick them up and they don't charge me for shipping, that would absolutely be a great option. So we'll see.
That's the fun of it is figure, because we're with the Kickstarter, we're not going through a retailer. We have to figure out the logistics, and we have to figure it out before the Kickstarter, because we have to make sure we price things. I have had one Kickstarter that I made very little off of, because I screwed up I didn't factor in the exchange rate. I was ordering the books from the British printing company, and I don't know what I did, but I didn't convert pounds to dollars correctly. So I broke even on all the physical books. Thank God so many people ordered ebooks, because
there you go.
So so this is so it's cool being able to interact directly with readers who are purchasing, but it's also dangerous because we have to do the math right. We have to get the conversions right. Otherwise, we owe the printer money, and the printer must get paid, or you don't get your book. So there's that danger.
I'm as much a writer as I am a business person at this point, because it really what it comes down to. The marketing side is easier because I actually know how marketing works, but it is a lot of that business side where it's a lot to consider, and it's a lot of logistics, and it's a lot of work. And I'm like, Yeah.
And you have to take into account currency conversion if you're ordering from another country. Don't be me and put the price in pounds
Don't be
as
Melinda.
the price in dollars, because
the pounds.
they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
Dollars and pounds are not equal, as I found out on my 4th Kickstarter for the Rogue Gods books.
That's a hard lesson to find.
Yeah, so everybody got a bargain on those because they ended up being priced at cost.
Well,
accidentally.
Some people really luck out. And as long as they like the books, we take those.
So I think we've covered pretty much everything. And again, there'll be links to the Kickstarter and to Joshua's other the newsletter and social media and whatever. I think you sent me a bunch of links. They'll all be down there.
Yes.
All of them. I don't have a limit on that sort of thing. And like I said, I'll do a separate episode talking about the Riders of the Apocalypse and Cursebreaker Joust and what I've been up to. That will be all separate. That's not in this episode. This is strictly about Joshua and the 5th Commander. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Melinda. This
has
been amazing. You
can come back anytime.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll come back for the sequel.
Yeah. We can come back on the sequel. We can come back to talk about, anything. As long as it's fantasy related, I'm pretty wide open. We've had episodes on all kinds of things.
I'll call you in 2 years when I finish Wheel of Time.
Okay. I'll be here. I'll probably have more books published.
probably a few more, yeah.
Yeah, well, when you write 4 chapters a week, every week, 52 weeks per year, the books do add up. Whether they're long or short, like the current one took 4.5 months because if you write 4 chapters a week, the words add up.
Now, when you say write books, are we talking like first draft complete or?
I edit as I go because I write 4 chapters a week, but that doesn't always translate to me writing every day because I have a full-time job and and I also take care of my mom. So there might be a couple of days where I don't get to write much, and sometimes the characters want to do things, and I'm like, I don't know if we should be doing this in this book. So I'll go back. I have an app on my phone. It's called @Voice with the @ symbol, and it's a free app, and it will read the story to me so that while I'm roaming around going for a walk or running errands, it'll read back the drafts, and if I hear something, I'll fix any typos. So like by the time I'm done with it, I really usually only have to do a hard edit on like the previous 4 chapters because I've reread everything up to that so many times. I mean, I do run it through editing software, but it doesn't usually, it just finds commas. For some reason, I just do not see where the commas go. And I need Pro Writing Aid to be like, no, you need a comma to go there. But I see all the other errors, just not commas. I don't know why. I'm just blind to them. So that generally ends up what I end up doing at the end is putting in commas. Lots of commas, hundreds of we're talking hundreds of commas.
I have no doubt.
But yeah, so that's what it ends up being, and I just end up, especially like if this plot can go in different directions or the characters want to take the plot in different directions, I always have to gut check it and just go back and reread. And with the app reading it to you, you can listen to like 10,000 words in an hour, which is about 4 or 5 chapters. So if I go for a 2-hour walk, I can listen to like a good chunk of the book. So
yeah, that makes sense.
And since it's, on my phone, the draft, because it's reading it to me, I can fix things. So that's what I end up doing. So I sort of edit as I go. So by the time I'm done, it's really just the last chapters. And sometimes I may need to, like with this one, there was a story arc that I just wasn't sure how to handle because it was displacing people from their homes, and with everything going on in the world, like I was not. I needed to figure out a way to handle this, and I just kept putting it off, and then the book was done, but we had this gap, and I couldn't not write that because we'd had in other books the setup with actual named characters, side characters that are, that have been in many books that are beloved by readers who actually live there. And I was like, I have to do something fair to it. And I didn't want to kick these people out of their homes. And then I was like, well, this is my world. I don't have to, it doesn't have to be horrible. We can get them help. We can do it we can do it in a hopeful way, in the right way. We don't have to do it in some horrible way. So I that's what I wrote this week, was that story arc. And then the characters had their own ideas. They wanted one of the characters who was involved in helping them with that to be added to the cast to help out their boss, because they like to get paid on time at some point. It's been 12 books and they haven't been paid on time at all in the series. And this was intolerable to them, because we had to do a whole story arc to fix that. But it also handled the displacement of the people in a really nice way. So I let them do it. But then I had to figure out where to weave it into the book. So I've been rereading the book to figure out the placement. And I think I've got it finally. So yeah.
That's impressive.
This book ended up being way longer than I thought it would be. I'm
very familiar with that.
The original draft I wrote actually in 2012 when I was at the New York Renaissance Fair. I don't know where the idea came from, but I was like, what if monsters interrupted a joust? And then it was like, well, what would the characters do? What would anybody do? And so I wrote, an original draft was 50,000 words, but there was never a reason for the monsters. They were just there.
They just showed up. Yeah, that's cool.
And then later with the whole Riders of the Apocalypse storyline, I was like, well, what if one of the Riders of the Apocalypse brought them? What if that was part of their plan? And it just kind of went from there. So I had to rewrite the original.
The question begets more questions.
Yes. So it ended up going from 50,000 words, which I kept, I don't think I kept any of the original draft. I'm pretty sure I rewrote almost the entire thing. It's completely different from the original draft. To now it's 100 and almost 150,000 words. I didn't think it would be that long, but there was a lot to do. We had the monsters. We had the Rider of the Apocalypse, who's a necromancer. So the people who died from the monster attack, she rose them from the dead. And we had zombies and to deal with her. And nobody wanted to call the one person who can take out the Riders of the Apocalypse. I still don't understand why the characters didn't want to call her. She's a really nice person. Mm-hmm. So we had lots. Oh, yeah. Anyways, we're not here to talk about my it's just all top of mind because I just finished that. But yeah, it ended up, but it is written like many of my other books where it has, I don't like prologues, but I like epilogues. It has many epilogues. There's many endings.
Epilogues are awesome.
Yeah. We find out what everybody is doing after it and what shenanigans because they don't stop after we defeat the bad guys. They get into more shenanigans. But it's in there. It's all in there. So I just need to finish rereading it and finish the last edit, which is what I'm working on. So I didn't mean to go off on the tangent.
No, you're so fine. You are so fine.
But yeah, so that's coming hopefully in the fall. I have to write 2 more books though before to finish out the Riders of the Apocalypse storyline. But that's the goal, is the fall. We will see if the characters make that if they allow that to happen, because I need them to behave for 2 books, and they didn't behave in Kurtzberger Joust. I don't know that they're going to behave in the next 2 books either. Mm-hmm. So we will see.
Yeah, I've run into that. I've run into that a lot. Gallen always pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, they do it in a good way. I mean, some of the things they came up with, I think make the story much better, much richer. The main character for my favorite series is the Kurtzberger series is a young man, and he is dealing with PTSD and other things. And in this book, he's wounded, so he finally has an opportunity to, he's saying he wants to be better, to actually take those steps and start doing those things. So it's an opportunity for healing and for moving forward. And so we do that, which I really like, and I think it's important to show that in fiction. People healing and taking those steps to be not just saying they want to be a better person and take better care of themselves and stop letting their demons get the better of them, but to actually show them trying to do work. Maybe they're gonna not get it right every time, but that they're trying to do it. and eventually will succeed if they keep trying. He better keep trying.
Yeah. I think you're dead on.
Yeah. So I think that's important. And showing friendships and family. He has a little boy who has a lot of ideas for what his father should be doing while recuperating. Yeah. I'm not going to say any more about that because it's fun and I'll let people read it when they get there. So
that sounds great.
Whenever it's out. Yeah. So anyways, that's it. Do remember to check out The Fifth Commander by Joshua Olivieri. There's the links below for the Kickstarter, which is coming possibly in June. But obviously follow it to get notifications. Because we don't want Joshua to kick it off until he's fully ready and he's got the printer locked in and the plan locked in, because whatever we set the tiers to is that's what we are. That's finalized once we start running it, the Kickstarter. So that's an important piece to nail down, the printer, because that can very much change the price of things and determine whether or not it. I hope his Kickstarter doesn't go the way that one of mine did, where I did not price things correctly and I didn't owe the printer, but it was a very close thing. I will hope that for your first Kickstarter that doesn't happen, that you are able to get some small royalty for your printed books and not owe the printer money and not be sweating it out like I was when I was ordering them.
I'm not horrible at math. Provided that I made sure I accounted for everything, I should be in good shape.
Okay. Because we do want authors to get some royalty for the blood, sweat, and tears and the years that some of them put into some of their books.
Absolutely.
Or the months, whatever period of time. Yeah. So thank you so much. Remember to come back for another episode. There's loads of episodes before this one to listen to. There will be some after it. I don't know when the next one will be. But yeah, there will be one soon. So thank you so much. Have a great day or a great night wherever you are.